How to do a subject to deal. Guys, it's Rick Ginn, and I'm just going to break down the simplicity of what a subject to is. That's right, it's called subject to. Anything else is kind of slang, and we want to use the right terminology. I'm going to give you the simple overview on how this works, and then I'm going to show you actually how to underwrite and take down a subject to deal. So guys, if you want to learn how to do this, do me a favor, make sure you smash that like button, hit that subscribe button so other people can find out how to do a subject to deal without the complications of expensive courses. So most real estate has three parts to a transaction. So it's important you understand all three of these, because then you can simply break down what you need to do on a simple subject to deal. Now, what is the definition of subject to? It's simply taking over the property with the existing debt in place. That's it. End of story. Anything else, people complicate it. Now, subject to falls under the umbrella of creative financing. It is a single strategy that, quite honestly, works really well. And if you know how to use it, you can help so many people out that really can't figure out how to solve their problem. So let's get into it. So as I said, you have three different phases. So number one, this is your subject to house. Pardon my drawings, but that's it. So this is your subject to property. And here's what you got to understand from a high-level overview on how this works. There's going to be three different parts of this transaction. Number one is going to be the deed, okay? The deed is actually your proof of ownership. And the deed is usually contained by the homeowner. This is important because this is what we're going to target when you do a subject to deal. Now, subject to deal is automatically going to insinuate there's existing debt, meaning there's some sort of bank loan. And a lot of people, depending on what part of the country is, there's going to be different sayings to do this and this. So we'll do that number one. Number two is going to be either a mortgage, or in some states, it's called a deed of trust. I know it's confusing, but that's just how they do it. They're based, just look it up in your state, you can figure it out. A mortgage and a deed of trust is the exact same. Now, this is what I call the leverage device. It basically means it's recorded and it announces to the world that you have debt on this property. It's physically attached to this property. And what that means is this property cannot be sold until this mortgage or deed of trust is satisfied. This is why banks are so willing to loan us money. Why? Because if I don't pay this mortgage or deed of trust, then what can they do? They can go into the court and they can enter into a foreclosure. And that is what we call the leveraging device. So everybody understand it. But there is a third document, which we'll call number three here. And then this is simply what we call a promissory note. And it's exactly what it says. I love how they named this one because I don't have to guess. It is basically the agreement for the debt. And here's the other thing is it's usually personally guaranteed by the new owner. So everybody understands. We have the deed. This is your proof of ownership. You can call it receipt, whatever you want. Doesn't matter. You get this piece of paper when you buy the house to show that you own it. That gives you the luxury of paying the property taxes, paying the monthly mortgage payment, and the next one goes to the mortgage. This is recorded in public records and it is tied to this property. Whenever they do a title search, they'll see there is debt assigned to the property, and until that debt is satisfied, you technically cannot clear the property and get clear title. We always talk about clear title. This is what clouds up the title, and this is why banks give the loan, because they have recourse. If you do not pay that mortgage back, they can foreclose on it. And the third one is a promissory note. And a promissory note is exactly what it says. You promise to pay the bank back. It is the agreement for the debt. It's going to spell out the interest rate, the amount of payments you're going to make, if it's 30 years, 15 years, or whatever. And it's going to tell you the fixed monthly amount. And basically, you're going to sign a whole bunch of documents on this saying, no matter what, you're personally signed onto this. So even if you leave the house, if you don't pay that debt back, you're stuck. So these are the three pieces you're going to do on a subject to deal, and it's important to understand. Now, we can go a step further here. This is what the homeowner has now, and this is what they can trade. Now, a homeowner will give you this in a subject to deal, and then what you do is you're going to take over the actual mortgage payment. So think about this. If they owed $100,000 on the home and say they even bought it I don't know, a year or two ago, and they got in over their head, which we'll talk about, then they're trying to get rid of this mortgage. This mortgage is what's killing them. Now, these two, to be honest with you, are intertwined. Now, if I'm going to take over a subject to deal, I'm usually going to control this right here. I'm going to have them sign it over and transfer it. We'll talk a little bit more about that. The next thing is I'm going to take this over. This is the subject to part. This is it. You're just taking over the payment. Think about this. If you took over, your buddy had a really nice car and say he lost his job, and you go, listen, I'd like to buy that car. Can I just take over the payments and give you $5,000 up front? It's the same thing. That car is going to be assigned some sort of recording on it with a promissory note, and then you are going to take it over subject to. And so the seller gives this up, and then you, the investor under subject to, this is what you're taking over. Here's the dirty little secret about subject twos, the promissory note. In the perfect world, we would exchange the seller for the new buyer, but guess what? The bank is never going to allow that to happen until it's paid off. So the promissory note forever is going to be linked to this mortgage, which is a little bit of the pitfall of doing subject to. Some people they want their name off that promissory note and they want their name off the mortgage. Remember guys, you cannot do that. You have to understand that for you to get the deed, you take over the mortgage payment. These are already locked in. Either you pay them, you let the bank foreclose on them, or they have to be settled out. That's the only way you can do a subject to. The word subject to means taking over the existing debt on the property. So we have the deed of trust or mortgage, depending on what state you're in, and then you have the promissory note. We get the deed. There might be some sort of financial compensation. We agree to take on the mortgage. Why? Because it's attached to the property. If we don't do it, then we lose the rights to use the house wherever we want. And then the promissory note, as long as we make payments, we live up to that agreement. Remember, our name's never personally on it. And so I know what you're thinking, Rick, why on earth would anybody want to do this strategy? And I'm here to tell you, it's simple. Let me erase this real quick. You could fast forward this section, it would be perfect. So the real question is why? Why do people do this? Why subject twos? So let's talk about from the seller standpoint first. And then what we'll also do is we'll do the investor. That's you. So I've been doing this long enough to understand exactly why people do this. What type of seller sells a property subject to? Little to no equity. Everybody got that? Little to no equity. Maybe they just want to avoid foreclosure. Maybe they want to save their credit. These two kind of go hand in hand. We'll put a plus sign on there. Some people want to do tax avoidance. So if they own an investment property and they own it outright, or maybe they recorded a hard money loan or something like that. Some people, when they get older, they don't want to pay the capital gains depending on everyone's unique situation, and they want to get out of tax avoidance. Either way, for the most part, all roads always lead to a subject to is the only solution. I can't stress this enough to you. Why? Think about this. If you had a property that was worth $300,000 and say you owed $280,000 in debt on a mortgage and you wanted to sell it, say you just bought it a year or two ago. So you're thinking, okay, I got $20,000 in equity. Wrong. So if you want to sell the house just for what you bought it for before, $300,000, you figured about 10 to 12% in closing cost. Let's just do 10%. They're going to owe $30,000, which means for them to close that deal, they have to bring $10,000 to the table. Think about this. Who wants to bring $10,000 to the closing table? And what I do is when I walk through this situation is I try to solve every issue going through. I actually try to wholesale the house. I try to pay all cash. And when I find out that they're going to have to bring a check to the closing table, it's hard to get a seller to convince of that. And I go through everything we talk about, avoiding foreclosure. We ask them, I always ask them, why don't you just list it with a realtor? They already know they can't because they can't afford to pay the realtor fees. So at the end of the day, the subject to should be the only solution for these types of deals. It's so black and white when I get a subject to deal. I don't have to talk anybody into a subject to deal. It is usually the only fit for that property. It just comes down, do the numbers work for you? And that's where you've got to have some discipline, some patience, and some wisdom to learn how to do creative financing. Because I see so many people out there and go do subject to deals and they get so excited doing the deal, they have no idea if they're actually going to make money. Let's go over to the investor side and see why they would do it. So the biggest and most important is no bank qualifying. If you don't know what I mean by this, do me a favor, walk into your local Bank of America as an investor and tell them you want to buy a property with little to no money down, and tell them you don't want to give them tax returns, you don't want to give them financials, and let me know how it works out. It's absolutely brutal. And even if you're perfect, you're usually going to have to bring and put down 20 to 30%. So the beauty about this is you get into with little to no, there's absolutely no bank qualifying at all. Guys, I can't tell you, this is one of the main reasons why people start in subject to. Because A, you don't have good credit, B, you don't have the funds for it, which leads me to the next one is little capital required. Think about this. If I'm going to buy a $300,000 property, I got to put down 30%, say 20% plus closing cost. I mean, that can be as much as like $75,000. And let's be honest, a lot of people don't have it. I didn't have it when I started out. That's why I did a subject to, which I'm going to go over the numbers on the next section here. You get to get low interest rates because you take over people with low interest on previous mortgages, especially from the ones back from 4 and 5 years ago. Some of these loans were under 3%. They're absolutely amazing deals. And here's, to me, my favorite part is do deals others can't. What do I mean by that? I found subject tos through my wholesaling business, and they would owe more than the property's worth, or like the numbers were very, very tight. And I go, man, how can I help these people out? Now, it took me a year or two to figure out how to do it, but I figured out how to do subject to deals. Why? Because other wholesalers used to just give me these deals. And I found that their lack of experience and lack of patience, I just teamed up with the right people and figured out how to do it. I didn't do them off the bat, but these are all the reasons why an investor and a seller would do it. Guys, the bottom line is when I talk to a seller that needs a subject to deal, they're usually bending over backwards for me to do the deal for them. It should be the only fit. You should never ever have to talk a seller to do a subject to deal. Here's my suggestion. Go through your wholesale business, find the people that you can help out the wholesale, and then the ones that are in a situation where they have to bring money to the closing table, see if you can make the numbers work. Don't worry, on the other side of this board, I'm gonna walk you through it so you understand how to do it. And at the end of the day, you've got to understand they have to be 100% cooperative, and you should be the only solution for a subject to deal. That means you have a good deal. If you try to talk people into it or they're not completely on board, you're literally wasting your time. Remember, the more people we can help, the more creative we get in our solutions, the more money we should always make. So let me switch over to the other side and show you how to do a typical subject to deal. And here's the difference, guys, is I teach this differently. Why? Because I see so many people do subject to deals that really have no idea what they're doing. So first and foremost, I want you to understand this. You need to consult a local real estate lawyer wherever you're doing this. I'm sorry if you skip this part, it's going to cost you in the long run. These are legal documents you have to go through, and I'm not a lawyer, you're not a lawyer. Don't try to be a pretend lawyer. If you really want to do a great subject to deal, you can use the help of a lawyer once or twice to set you up in that current market and state and become familiar with all the laws and make sure you are compliant. I can't stress this enough. Now, how to do a subject to deal. I'm gonna run you through this. Don't worry, it's recorded, you can run through it. Number one, run through your wholesale business and do not change it. I can't repeat this. For those of you that wanna do subject to because you bought a course and somebody said, you don't have to compete with all the other wholesalers, you're just gonna run out of time and money. Wholesaling is what produces the cash to buy subject to deals. If you go out and just hunt for subject to deals, how are you gonna finance them all? Now, some of you have money, but you're gonna run out. But I'm here to tell you, do your wholesale business to create the cash flow to buy assets, to build your real estate portfolio. If you commit to do creative financing, maybe you took a subject to course, you're gonna run into a multitude of problems. Number one, you're gonna run out of cash. And number two, you're gonna have plenty of deals out there, but you're not gonna know how to make money with them, and you're gonna have to come back to wholesaling. How do I know this? I've seen countless people do it over and over. Subject to requires experience. The best way to get experience is talk to as many sellers as you can through your wholesale business And from that, find the people that truly need your help, that fit for that subject to, and then you can get the guidance and the help to get it done. If you try to do subject to or creative financing only, I promise you, you're going to run out of money. Everyone who does, I've done 30, 40, 50 deals, but like they have no money. How do you get the money? It's always going to be from wholesaling. If you think you can replace wholesaling off the bat with little to no experience just doing subject twos, you're sadly mistaken. You're going to run out of money and you're going to have to come back and learn wholesaling from me and Zach. I'd rather you teach you the right way. Number two, I don't believe subject to is a beginner strategy. Why? Because you're not familiar with the paperwork. You're not familiar with the lingo. And number three, you don't know how to put these deals together. You might in theory, but the reality is when you get out there, you're going to see a lot of different situations. I probably passed 30 subject to deals till I did my first one, so I could completely understand them. If you think you're just going to take someone's course, jump on a subject to, and make a ton of money, you're sadly mistaken. These are a long-term play, but I want to show you how you can actually incorporate subject twos into your wholesaling business and make money at all 3 points. Let me show you how to do it. Number two, you need to understand a subject to should be the only way to solve the problem. Meaning if you're doing a subject to, it's the only way to solve that seller's problem. Why? Because there's existing debt on the property that's recorded against the property, and the only way to get past this is have somebody take over that note. Let's face it, guys. If they could sell it traditionally, they most likely would, and they wouldn't need people like you and me. So I want to find people that are stuck in that situation, and when it arises, I have the tools, I have the knowledge, and I know how to take these deals down. The next one is underwrite the property numbers, underwrite the mortgage. You guys actually have to find out what the value of the property is and find out all the underlying numbers. How do I do that? Go to xleads.com. They'll tell you what the equity is right there on the first page so you don't waste time. But you also have to underwrite the mortgage. What do I mean by that? You need to know what the monthly payments is. You need to know how much the mortgage is for. You need to know if it includes principal, interest, tax, and insurance, called PITI. And most importantly, we need to know if they're behind on any payments. You also want to get an idea of the rental rates. Once again, xleads.com solves all this. And then you want to get the value and if there's any repairs. It's a lot of information. This is why I stress subject to is not a beginner strategy. It is something you build in your wholesale business. And when you learn how to take those deals down, you have a legal understanding of how to do the documents, and you are the only fit for it, and the seller is 100% on board. Knock it out of the park. And the next one, as I put in there, is the seller has to be 100% on board. If you have a seller that has 99%, they got a 1% reservation, don't do it. It's going to blow up on you. You're going to need their help with additional paperwork, with escrows, with insurance, and if they have the slightest bit of remorse, they're going to back out on the deal and you're going to waste a lot of time and money. So everybody I do a subject to deal with, as well as you, they have to be 100, probably 110% on board. If there's any slight hesitation, don't do the deal, because you need their help sometimes all the way till the end. I find if they have any reservations, those are the deals that I absolutely regretted in subject to. So make sure you're solving a problem and you're pretty much the only person that can solve the problem. That makes them happy, that makes them excited to work with you, and they'll wind up hugging you for solving their problem. Now, once I know the seller's on board, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the part a lot of the beginners screw up. They don't clearly estimate the repairs on it. So any new subject to deal doing, and say you're in your first year or in your second year, try to keep your repairs under 5K. Why? Number one, it limits your capital. Number two, it gives you more options with the property. But if you're going to do a subject to with 10, 15, 20, 30,000, it's going to cost a ton of capital. It's going to cost even more time. And most of you aren't prepared for it. And if you have little to no money, you do not want to go down this rabbit hole. Find someone you can either partner up with to help put up the capital or take the deal down or try to get it sold traditionally. I'm telling you, if somebody has to fund a big repair bill, it's going to severely limit your options in a subject to deal. My personal belief, anything under 5K, why? Because I can get it cleaned up in a week or two. I can do a rent to own, I can do a wrap, I can almost do anything. The higher the repairs, the more money you're gonna have to come up front. Trust me, in the beginning, try to find nice, clean houses. They're so much easier, I promise you, in subject to. Now, here's where I'm going to talk about the three-prong approach. You can make money up front, you make money in the middle, and you make money at the end. Here's where I do this differently than most other subject to investors. And guys, I'm going on my 22nd year and I haven't had any problems with this. Now, number one, the upfront fee. Most sellers want some sort of money to exchange the deed. We all agree with that. I'm here to tell you, most of you don't understand the go for no approach. Most of you don't understand me and Zach's philosophy of go for no. Stop trying to guess what your seller wants and just make them a low offer. What do I suggest? A lot of you all think, you got to give them 10 or 20K. I'm here to tell you, I don't even talk numbers like that. I offer anywhere from 1,000 to 5K up front in exchange for the deed. And you know what? I've had people giving me their houses without ever even asking for money. I like to induce them to buy them on board. Some of them needed moving expenses. So start out with 1,000 and go up to 5,000. Stay within these numbers, because if you offer too much up front, you're not going to make any money. And if I want to show you how you make money up front, in the middle, and the end, you have to go with this philosophy. If you think you're going to give somebody like $30,000 and think you're going to make any money up front, you're going to get killed in this business. Is everyone going to say yes? Absolutely not. But this is where you negotiate. Remember, we're talking to people that if they don't do something, they're going to lose the house anyway. So they're already going to get zero and a big fat bill. So sometimes offering between $1,000 and $5,000 works for them. Remember, every house has a different situation. You have to underwrite the house and the value. And guys, if the value of the house is $300,000 and they owe $395,000 on the deal, don't do the deal. You can't fix a bad deal unless it's unique, like downtown or waterfront. Do not get tied up in these types of deals because you bought a subject to course. There's plenty of them out there. They're really not that hard to find. You want to find stuff that has up value, meaning the value should go up and you can make the cash flow work. So if the property is completely over leveraged, don't do those deals. If they're bad for the current owner, they're going to be bad for you. So here's what I like, 1 to 5K. So say you had to give them $5,000. I'll even go to the extreme. I'm being nice today. Why do I want it so low? Because if I'm going to put in there on a buyer, I'm not going to get into details how we sell it. I'll do another video on that. I've already done a ton of them. Is you can do a wrap, which means you're just the middleman on them taking over the mortgage. You can do a lease option. You can do a rent to own. Heck, you can do a straight up rental. But I want you to understand, if they were going to rent that house from you, and say the house rented for $3,000 a month, and if they were going to rent it, they have to leave the first month, they'd have to leave the last month and the security. That's $9,000. Here's what I'm asking for my buyers, $15,000. I try to get 3 times whatever my payment. So if I had a $10,000 payment, I would want to try to get 30 here. So if I start doing a bigger number here, I can make very little money. And what's my net cash flow on that? That's like getting a $10,000 assignment fee up front, okay? That's step number 1 on the up front, okay? That's 1. Number 2, in the middle, find out what the mortgage monthly payment is and find out if all the expenses are tied into it. So if I'm getting, if the payment's $1,488 a month, I should have done a round number. Let's do a round number because I can't do the math on that. Let's just call it $1,500, okay? In the perfect world, I would like to get 2 times. But the reality is you want to get 1.5 is really going to be the target. What do I mean by that? If I'm getting $1,500, I'd like to charge $3,000 a month. But if I do 1.5, which I'll do a calculator right here, the range would be basically $2,300. Why? Because you have no idea. You could have a vacancy, you could have a lot of problems with the property. You got to have some sort of spread on here. So if my spread's between $800 to $1,500 a month. I know a lot of you are saying, you're like, Rick, those are crazy numbers. I'm here to tell you, this is how you make money with a subject to. If you think you're going to make money by earning $100 a month, you're going to get killed in this business. The numbers always go up. Keep in mind, the tax and insurance will go up over time. And if you don't plan accordingly, even though you pass those costs on, sometimes you get stuck with them. That's what you want to do. And then the last one, number 3, is your end price. So let's say the property's worth $300,000. I usually like to add 10% on it or a little bit more. Let's call it. So say my contract price is, say I bought it for them for $280,000. Okay, my personal thing is I like to add 0.2 to my contract. You can even do 0.25, but you got to be careful because sometimes the numbers, because I want them to be able to buy it. So if I buy it for 280,000 times 280 times 1.2, that puts me at 336,000. And guys, I want you to understand this. Here's the really cool part about subject twos. Every month they make a payment, the principal goes down. So they're paying down the mortgage for me. They're saving my original seller's foreclosure. They're saving their credit. And here's the really cool part. When I go to sell it at 336, they put 10,000 down. So they owe me 326. And say I had a $280,000 mortgage, and say 5 years went by and I knocked it down to 265. Check this out. This is my favorite part. And this is why everybody loves to do creative financing. That's $61,000 plus the original 10,000 plus the cash flow we added in the middle on it. So that's 61 plus 10. And say we only average 500 bucks a month for 60 months. 500 times 60, that's another $30,000. So from that deal, we did 30, let's see, 6, 9, 10. That's $101,000. Now, remember, there's 3 phases where you make money in this. So if I make 10,000 here, that's number 1, I get paid up front. Just like a wholesaler would, you're taking a little bit less. Number 2, if I take that middle money, we said that's going to be, let me come down here, that's 30,000. And then if I looked on the end money, that winds up being 61,000. And guys, this is the reason why subject twos are awesome. And you know what? Here's what I want you to do. Continue doing your regular wholesaling business. When somebody comes up with a property that there's very little equity or they're in some type of pre-foreclosure situations, these are the ones that you want to jump on. Now, what I would do is I would meet with my local title company, or if you're doing it virtually, and say, listen, I'd like to do some subject to deals. What contract do you think is acceptable? Most state contracts already have the subject to line built into them. So the contract's easy. What I want you to do is meet up with a lawyer to take down the deed correctly, and you record everything perfectly to make sure your transaction sticks. Do not, guys, I cannot repeat this, do not buy someone's course and just assume that paperwork's correct. Even with the courses I bought it, I still run it through a lawyer, and there's so many different ways to do it. Remember, you're basically doing a technicality. There's nothing against the law and subject to. Remember, you need a 100% cooperative seller, and you ideally should be the only fit for them because they've tried realtors, they've tried listing it on their own, and if they don't do something, they're probably going to lose the house and the amount of stress they have. These are the people that we want to help out. Guys, let me know if you want to do some subject twos. I love doing these types of deals. I like to make money up front, I like to make it in the middle, and I like to make it at the end. And guys, here's the really cool part is, when you sell these things, you can do like whatever you want. Sometimes you guys can even buy a house for yourself and take it over subject to. Qualifying for banks is challenging in today's market, and if you can avoid it and you can help a seller out, subject twos are perfect. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, make sure you smash that like button, hit that subscribe button, and share the secrets of subject to with someone that needs help with it. Guys, this is Zach Ginn, and I'll see you in the next video.